Hey, good morning. This is Father George Corrigan, and this is the 18th Sunday of Ordinary Time, the last day of July, and these are a few Sunday thoughts on the readings for this weekend. The readings for this weekend, Paul starts out there in Colossians 5, and he says, you want to live a good life. Part of the things we need to work on is put to death sort of the earthly things, especially immorality, impureness, evil desires, and then especially greed. Greed that Paul calls idolatry. That thing we worship instead of God, idolatry. The gospel sort of holds up in high relief that story of the rich fool, the one who has everything he wants, but that night he will lose. And Jesus warns, take guard against greed. Against greed, not aspiration, not wealth or growth, inheritance, success, or profit, but take care against greed. And also be aware that those things can be the portal into your heart where greed enters in. The first reading from Ecclesiastes, and a little past our reading where it says, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. In Ecclesiastes 5:9 it says, one of those things that's real vanity is greed and covetousness. You know why? It's never satisfied. It's never satisfied. And it reveals like that bitter irony that greed can't deliver the very thing it promises. In the 4th century, John Cassian, the monk said, yep, covetousness just intensifies itself. Greed is insatiable. You always want a little bit more. How much more? Well, John D. Rockefeller famously said, just a little bit more. But it's always just a little bit more. And so greed, if you go to a simple working definition, it's that desire to possess more than we need. It could be dollars, it could be wealth, it could be fame, sex, power. It's why it's always been looked at as one of the 7 deadly sins. William Barclay, the New Testament scholar, says, the thing about greed is it will always pursue its own interest, even against the common good, what's good for humanity, always against that. And so we as individuals, we're not immune from this. But we are left in this world in which, the things that are all good, wealth, inheritance, aspiration, we had to grapple with those and make sure that we don't fall into greed. Like as Paul says, as the rich fool experiences, the wages of sin are death. And so you can pray, Lord, stop. Don't make me a greedy person. Keep greed away from me. Hope that works for you. But here's the problem. Even if it works for you, there's a void that needs to be filled. Because nature abhors a vacuum. It'll fill up with something. But the question is, are you ready to fill it up with something that's good? I wish our second reading had just included 2 more verses, because Paul answers that question. What matters to God, as Jesus asked in the gospel? And Paul answers the question in those verses. He says, it's compassion, it's kindness, it's humility, gentleness, patience, forbearing and forgiving each other as God has forgiven us. But above all, put on love. That's what matters to God. Put that in your storehouse. Build those things. So if you want to pray to her, say, Lord, today help me to recognize a situation where one of those virtues can come into play. Even if I'm not feeling it, help me to do it. Because when we practice the virtues, it then becomes our reaction. It becomes our words. It's what we think about. It becomes the things that we do in the world. It develops the character that we have and leads to the person that we are becoming. Pray to be able to recognize and practice the virtues, and you will slowly fill up that storehouse of what matters to God, and you will be truly rich. And those are some Sunday thoughts. Amen.